Hello and welcome. This is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake, and this is a 1984 Mercedes-Benz 300D. This belongs to my friend and one of our members, Jack. And this car was imported, it was federalized here in 1992, and it has over 500,000 miles on its inline 5-cylinder naturally aspirated diesel and 4-speed manual transmission. Now, over the years, Mercedes-Benz has offered the 300 series, now E-Class, in so many body styles. These cars have been sold as sedans, coupes, convertibles, and wagons, and they've been sold in 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive variants. While the model range has gone in a decidedly different direction from the older, slower diesels that were naturally aspirated, they're still known as that kind of Goldilocks size of Mercedes-Benz sedan. If you want something a little bit bigger than the C-Class, but a little bit smaller than the S-Class. The E-Class is what you'll buy that can generally seat 4 reasonable sized adults and get around with decent power and fuel economy, but also have a little bit of fun. Now, these 300 series, these W213s, were never particularly quick. However, in the model ranges that followed, there's always been a special one. And today we're here to talk about the most special of them all. And Jack's 88 horsepower diesel is the exact opposite of where the E-Class range has gone. This car only made 88 horsepower and took 17.8 seconds to get from 0 to 60. And even in gasoline form, the cars didn't make all that much power. The most power they made was about 180, 182, and they were still only rated about 10 seconds to 60. So with that, let's head on up to the top of this garage and see what has happened in the Mercedes E-Class model range since Jack's 88 horsepower diesel was first sold new. All right, and that is Jack's W123 300D. And moving on, Jack's W123 was replaced by Jake's W124, which was the first time Mercedes really offered a fast E-Class in the form of the 500E. That was a collaboration with Porsche. Porsche figured out a way to stuff the 5-liter V8 from the SL into the 124 body, along with some suspension changes, some Recaro seats, and they didn't bring that many of them here to the United States. Only 10,000 or so were made, and fewer than that actually made it here. So moving into the 1990s, the first AMG badged E-Class was a variant of this car. This is Seth's W210 E320. This was the first AMG-ified E-Class that was officially sold through Mercedes-Benz dealerships as the Mercedes-AMG merger had wrapped up a few years prior. And Mercedes made about 4,000 E55s that came here to the United States, and they didn't bring any of them here as wagons, although they did sell 193 units overall. And with that, let's move into the 2000s with the 3 AMGs that we've got here. These are all 3 AMG E-Classes, and we're gonna start with Dave's 2007 E63 AMG. Dave's W211 came out in 2003. It was first as the new E55 for a few years, and they only sold about 8,000 examples. In 2007, these cars were given a facelift and a new V8 engine, and they were sold as the E63 AMG. This is where the fast E-Class became known as the E63, and it had a 6.2-liter naturally aspirated V8 engine under the hood. Production numbers for the W211 E63 are nearly impossible to find, but it seems like about 3,000 of them were imported to the United States, and again, only a few were wagons. Officially, 153 of these came into the United States as an E63 AMG wagon. And moving right along, Mike's 2012 W212 chassis is the first instance of the E63 where the numeric badging doesn't match up with the displacement. The 6.2 from the older car was replaced just 1 year into the model run and swapped for a twin turbocharged 5.5-liter V8. The W212 was also the first E63 to offer 4MATIC all-wheel drive. That had been offered on non-AMGs for years, but it was the first here in the W212. Production numbers were again really hard to find, but officially Mercedes sold 785 W212 E63 AMG wagons here in the United States. And that brings us to the brand new one, which actually came out in 2017, but was facelifted this year for the 2021 model year. So let's take a breath, and then we'll talk about what the 2021 Mercedes-AMG E63 S is. So with all of that, here is what's what with the newest 2021 E63 S. Drivetrain-wise, Mercedes has moved to a hand-built 4-liter twin-turbo V8 with turbos in the hot V that goes between the cylinder heads. AMG follows their longtime philosophy of one man, one engine with these special V8s, and in our case, a nice blonde man named Christian built ours in a Falterbach. We actually got a hold of him on Instagram, and he's very proud of the work that he did. Now, the M177 hand-built V8 that is in this car produces 603 horsepower and 627 pound-feet of torque, which Mercedes-AMG claims is good for a 3.3 second run to 60 miles an hour and a 10.9 second quarter mile time. That is quite the difference from Jack's 88 horsepower diesel. Now, this car uses a 9-speed AMG Speed Shift MCT automatic transmission. This is not a dual clutch, but it is also not a torque converter automatic. It uses a startup clutch instead of a torque converter. There are several clutches positioned together in an oil bath. This is a wet clutch style transmission, but they're controlled separately. There's only one input shaft, which is why it's not considered a true DCT. Although there's only one input shaft, it can do multiple downshifts at once. This is not the first model, like I said, with 4MATIC all-wheel drive, but it is standard here, and it's called 4MATIC Plus, which means it's able to send up to all of the power to the rear wheels. There is a standard limited slip rear differential, and of course, standard adaptive suspension. It uses air suspension, which is a form of Mercedes air body control, and you've got that adaptive exhaust out back as well. All of that changes with your different drive modes, and we will see how it all performs here in just a minute. Now, stopping this brute of a 603 horsepower E63 are some big brakes. They are optional, they are ceramic, and in this case, they're nearly $9,000. They are a 2-piece 15.8-inch front rotor and a 14.2-inch rear rotor. Now, with that, let's head back to Dave's W211 because this one is not the cheapest thing in the world. This is the biggest, baddest, newest E63, but it also costs as much as a condo or a townhouse in some parts of the world. The MSRP of this one comes to almost $140,000, and that is a lot of money for a lot of people. So what do you do if you're looking for AMG E-Class, power, refinement, luxury, all that good stuff, but you're on a budget that isn't new condo money? That's when you get on the used market. So this is Dave's 2007 Mercedes E63 AMG Wagon. It is a whole second slower to 60 than the new one, but he only paid $20,000 for it. It does run a naturally aspirated 6.2-liter V8 engine, which is also hand-built, and it makes 507 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque if it is stock, which this one's not. Now, Mercedes hadn't thrown all-wheel drive at these wagons yet, so Dave's wagon is rear-wheel drive only. I would say all the better for burnouts, but that fancy 4MATIC on the new one can shoot all the power to the rear wheels. Now, sending power to the rear wheels here is no fancy transmission. It is a regular 7-speed 7G-tronic torque converter automatic. We've got Mike's W212 E63 here as well as that kind of in-between option if you're looking for something a little more modern than Dave's 211, but not quite as costly as that brand new model. And with all of that said, let's get behind the wheel of the newest one and Dave's W211 as our oldest and most affordable version of the E63 and see how they stack up behind the wheel. All right, so first up, driving impressions of Dave's W211. Now, like I said, this is the first year of the facelift. It's a 2007, and that was when the E-Class AMG first became the E63 by badging. So this is not actually a 6.3 liter, it's a 6.2, and the displacement is low enough, you're not gonna round it up, it's like 6,207 or something, but regardless, they called it an E63, and like I said, it's a 500-something horsepower super wagon in this case. Most of them were sedans, but if you're lucky enough, you can find one in wagon form, as Dave did. Now, I was told to keep this car above 3,500 RPM, and I will have, quote, a lot more fun. So when we get up here toward the twisty bits, I'm going to leave the transmission in its manual mode. There's no actual manual gate here, but there is a button to go from comfort to sport to manual. So it's in sport, put it in M for manual right now, and I've got 7 gears at my disposal with paddle shifters. I should mention this 2007 E63 is not stock. The only thing that's really been done to it is the exhaust. So where the newer car has a cutout with a button you can push, Dave has modified this one. It's got some aftermarket headers on it, and it sounds very good when you let it run out a little bit, make some good noises. If you get really hard on the pedal, those are very good noises. And that is old school V8. It's just, there's no turbo noise, there's no turbo feeling. and it's going to make a lot more noise even as it takes longer to build power. Of course, you got some little pops and cracks. That's not a pop and burble tune. It's just what you get with a big naturally aspirated V8 with some exhaust pulled off of it. What's interesting there with that little pull is that made a lot of really good noises. It did not feel the fastest. There was no slam you back in your seat sort of feeling like you get from a turbo car, or in some cases a supercharged car. So this is very quick, absolutely, but it does not have that throw you back insta torque that you get with a turbo, or in the case of the new E63, the twin turbos. I'm finding the transmission shifts to be kind of lazy. The other thing worth mentioning here in the 2007 E63 is the visibility. Obviously, these cars were designed far, far before the 2021 E63 was even conceived, but the first of this W211 E-Class came out for the 2003 model year. So we were still in the era of low belt lines, low sight lines, good visibility everywhere, and not a lot of cameras. There's no backup camera here. There's no blind spot monitoring. There's not a lot of technology going on. And the visibility, especially from the driver's seat, from my seating position, straight out over the hood is great. The dash is nice and low. I can see where the hood slopes. And then it may seem kind of tacky to some of you, but the Mercedes-Benz star sticking up off the hood is actually really nice because you have an idea kind of where that front bumper is. So no, you don't need cameras and everything. You just need good visibility. Now, this car does have the adaptive suspension, and it will raise and lower itself, which is air suspension, and it can stiffen up or loosen just like the new car can. You can hear everything sliding around in the back seat. What's interesting there is I got a traction control light blinking at me. It did not like what I was doing, and that was in a straight line. So obviously Mercedes made a good decision to add 4MATIC to the newer E63s because that was a straight line and it thought I had a little bit of wheel slip going on. But this is easy. For being a 7-passenger, 3-row wagon, this is not bad. This is pretty good performer for what it is. It is definitely slow to build power, and the transmission is slow to make shifts. Those are really the two things that I'm not the biggest fan of. I think at the time it was obviously pretty good. However, technology marches on. We've got more advanced engine technology, we've got more advanced transmission technology, and why not use it? I don't think you'll be disappointed if you end up in one of these. However, you have to really want the older, simpler car with its older, simpler engine, transmission, the lack of technology. If you want driver assistance tech, you may not get it here. I think they started offering some of it, but you really saw more of that on the 212, which is Mike's car, and then obviously the 213, the brand new one. I do think this car feels a little bit more like the proverbial sledgehammer. This is a car that wants to have all of its fun in a straight line primarily. Will it do these curves? Yes. Do I feel super confident doing it? Confident enough, but this is the one that wants to just sit out on the Autobahn with your right foot hard down, and just flying past everyone as your kids sit in the 3rd row seat facing backwards, waving at everyone you just passed. That is what this car wants to do. It is not going to be quite as composed, quite as delicate, but it's so old school in the best way. This is like a really modern, old school AMG where they just want to, have big fat engines, big fat tires. All right, now with all that, let's hop into the 2021 E63 S with that 4MATIC Plus and see how that, plus that 9-speed MCT, all works together to go up and over the same mountain pass. Alrighty, and now driving the 2021 Mercedes-AMG E63 S. This is the penultimate version of the E63 for the 2021 model year, unless you consider the wagon to be your superstar, in which case Mercedes-Benz will sell you one. This is immediately, it feels a little quicker off the line thanks to those 2 turbos. I will say, when you when you really stand on it, it does take a second for the turbos to spool up all the way, even if you're in the full-on race mode in your drive modes. So pretty interesting there. You would think that it would spool fairly quickly, but it's definitely geared and tuned for more top end versus anything. It's not to say it doesn't make tons of power down low, it certainly does, but it really takes a second. Then once you're off to the races, you better hold on. The biggest improvement here is definitely from the transmission. That MCT works so much better than the old 7G-tronic, where it just can upshift and downshift immediately, and Mercedes says it will skip gears if you let it do its own thing and shift on its own. So that's pretty cool. Really makes this feel a lot more nimble, surprisingly, just to have those gears delivered exactly when you want. It's not so clunky. Now once you've got the revs up, I mentioned there's kind of some turbo lag down low. Cancel.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
Cancel. MBUX continues to be a slight thorn in my side whenever I record these videos because it wants to come on at the worst times. Anyway, as I was saying, a little bit of turbo lag down low, but if you're on a road like this and keeping the revs above, 3,000 or so, everything's spooled up, it feels pretty good. It feels real good out of a corner. And obviously the suspension is a little less tired than Dave's car, given his has 158,000 miles on it, but this does want to turn in a little bit better, and it will put the power down with much more confidence, especially as you're exiting a corner, thanks to that 4MATIC Plus. Dave's car, I'm being real careful to try and not kick the tail out, and even as you noticed in that one straightaway section, I still put my foot down and in a straight line got the traction control light spinning because it was just a lot of power for two wheels to put down. Turn-in definitely feels quicker. I think the steering ratio is probably more preferable on this car. It's definitely a little quicker, so that's really, really nice. This feels like a car that's much happier on those back roads, whereas Dave's 2007 is just so much more of a sledgehammer. This is still a hammer when you need it, but it is also a little bit more of a scalpel when you are trying to have some fun on a road with some tight curves like this. This just feels so much more at home here, and the capability is really quite something. I did mention the W211 is much happier as a city car, and that is the case. This is a real fun car for roads like this, and even on the highway it's pretty good, it's pretty comfy, but it's just so unhappy being forced to live the life of a city car. I've driven it through different downtown areas, running some errands, and it doesn't want to be doing that. It wants to be doing this, or on a track, or on the highway, on the Autobahn, and everything is just a little clunky, everything's a little aggressive. I mean, even putting it in park is just this aggressive maneuver where it kind of clunks itself in there, and it's not a clunk like something's broken, it's just a clunk of, all right, well, we're done. And this is everything that Dave's car is just not. They're so different. I don't think either one is bad. They're both good in their own ways, but Dave's W211 just feels much more like old school American muscle in a German wrapper. This feels downright European. This wants to turn. Truly, the 211 would not be happy doing this at all. Where I was not confident to push that, this is just so happy. The way that 4MATIC throws you out of a corner is just insane. I don't doubt that this car is faster left to its own devices, clicking up and down through the gears. However, the paddles are very responsive, and it's nice to have some control where you really have these corners and this is a second gear, this is a third gear sort of turn. And also you've got the engine braking capability, so you can save those brakes even though The braking ability is quite good. It's just, this feels so much smaller than it is. It is so light on its feet for being 4,600 pounds of curb weight. It's just so well done. If you had told me getting out of Dave's 211 and into this 213 that they would feel like such different cars, I would have told you you were nuts. Obviously, there's a lot of years of engineering and research that's gone into making this one clearly that much more impressive. But where Dave's is kind of the bull in the china shop, if the china shop has a lot of tight turns, this is, you know, a ballerina, just graceful going through everything. Very, very capable, but very graceful, easy to do it. And I mean, that was impressive. Is it a fun car in the city at slow speeds where you have to be very careful and, you know, kind of lug it around at 2,000 to 3,000 RPM? No, it's really out of its element there. It wants to go fast, it wants to be revved high, as all of these AMGs do. However, this one can actually, you know, pick up its skirt and get through some turns, which is very impressive. All right, and that is it for this review of the 2021 Mercedes-AMG E63 S and Dave's 2007 Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG Wagon. Thank you so much for coming along. As always, please give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube. And if you're looking to connect with other LGBT automotive enthusiasts and a bunch of our friends, head over to outmotorsports.com. We've got a whole community over there, and we would love to have you join us. Till next time, please stay safe, be well, and we'll see you again soon.